So for those of you who've never heard of the design history, I'm sorry if I'm repeating it for those of you that have been to these events before, but for those that haven't, the DHS is the leading subject association promoting and supporting the study of design histories, both in the UK and internationally. We do this through the Journal of Design History, an annual conference and a programme of events, in addition to supporting a number of awards and grants. The membership of the Society is open to all and includes copies of the journal and access to all our awards and grants. Fiona and I oversee a number of awards, and as part of our role, and we have a couple of award deadlines coming up in the next few weeks. The 30th of June, I think the deadline is, Fiona, which is the Student Essay Prize and the Design Writing Prize. Fiona recently recorded an interview with this year's Design Writing Prize judge, Jarrett Fuller, and we're going to put a link to our Linktree page in the chat so that you can have a look at the things that we're doing. We also have a number of workshops organised at this year's conference, Memory Full, in September at FHNW Academy of Art and Design in Basel, Switzerland, alongside which our student officer, Ty Kosich, has a number of student events as well. As I said, everything about the podcast, our awards, and everything we do will be on our Linktree page. So tonight's event, we initially conceived of this as a one-off event, but we received an overwhelming number of responses which were too good to pass up. So we turned it into the series. For those of you that have been to the previous events, the first event was called Meeting the Challenges of Virtual Teaching. The second was Student-Centered Learning Strategies. And today our presenters will be talking about and thinking about virtual learning in museums and heritage. So the format for today is we're going to introduce each speaker. And then once the speakers have finished their presentation, then we're going to, when all the speakers have finished their presentations, then we're going to open it up to questions and answers. The first speakers are going to be Sarah and Judy Wilcox. The second is Dr. Carlo Cassat. I've pronounced your name incorrectly and I apologize. And then finally, Harriet Smith and Jennifer Hackney are going to finish up today's presentation. So, Sarah and Judy, do you want to upload your presentation while I'm doing your introductions? Sarah,
can I just say though that for some reason, although it was working in the tech check, my camera is not now working, so I can't see myself in the little box.
Yeah, we can't see you either.
Yeah, I don't know whether my screen share is going to work, but I'll try.
Do you want to try and leave, Judy, and then come back in? I can let you straight back in if you want to try that.
Jenna's also got your presentation, so she could share it for you.
That's great, but I'd like to leave and come back. That would be really helpful.
That's all right.
Yeah, I wouldn't know when to press the thing as well.
Right, well, I'll do their bios slowly, and then by the time I've finished, hopefully Judy will be back. So Sarah Campbell is a curator at the Central St. Martin's Museum and Study Collection. She has a background in the history of art and has 10 years experience working in museums. Her area of interest in the Central St. Martin's collection is the contemporary collection of recent graduate work and fine art. She teaches on a variety of courses at Central St. Martin, including the MA Culture, Criticism and Curation, and has a special interest in object-based learning and playful learning. Judy is a museum professional with over 20 years of experience in the sector. She's currently head of museum and study collection at Central St. Martin's and a member of teaching staff on the Central St. Martin's MA Culture, Criticism and Curation, and a senior research fellow with an interest in museology, archives, creation and object-based learning. I keep looking up to see if Judy's there.
I'm here.
But yeah,
but my video
is not working. Yeah.
I don't know why. It'll just have to be an ethereal voice.
I have attempted to share my screen. I'm not sure if you can see that though.
I can see yours, Sarah.
Can you see the presentation?
Yeah.
Judy, if you're okay, we can just go ahead and it seems to be working for me. And we can go for that.
Okay. So in 2012, Judy was a co-founder of the Share Academy program, exploring how universities collaborate with museums and the wider cultural heritage sector. More recently, she developed a research interest in well-being and is the convener with Dr. Joanna Mora of UAL's Creative Practices Education Wellbeing Community of Practice. So do you want to take it away?
We will indeed. I'm so sorry that you can't see me. So I'm Judy Wilcox, and with Sarah Campbell, I look after the learning and teaching offer at the Central St Martin's Museum and Study Collection. This year, like many other museums, we've had to find ways of shifting our offer online. And in this short presentation, Sarah and I would like to share a few hints and tips with you about the things that we've learned. And I should begin by saying that we offer this up in all humility, knowing that we still have a lot to learn. It's very much a work in progress. And if we're getting anything right, it's because we've had an opportunity to learn from some of our partners in UAL, from Shades of Noir, who are a UAL-based team who supports anti-racism and social justice in education. And they've published a virtual learning netiquette online, which we find really useful and we'll share with you later. We've also benefited from having an amazing team of techs in the CSM digital learning team, and there's been a lot of hand holding while we've found our feet.
Based on our experience of teaching with museum objects for the first time online this year, we've come up with a number of things that we think you'll need for a good, successful online session. A secure live teaching space is the first thing that you'll need for your teaching, but also some structured content from you, and that might be the kind of thing that you usually give as a presentation or talk. Some kind of interaction with the audience is also a really useful part of this, and is a prompt to kind of start people to engaging and being active rather than passive in a session. The ability to share your screen, as we've learnt today, is another key thing, particularly for sharing PowerPoint presentations. And it's important that we've got kind of pre-prepared content, websites and things like that, that you've got ready to go to use that. A thing we usually really like in our sessions as well is splitting our groups into breakout groups. And we'll discuss that a bit more later on. But it allows your participants to discover things in a more kind of friendly way, discussing things with themselves. We also use a form of feedback so groups can share what they've learnt, and that's again a really good part of reflection that comes into it. You can use the chat function for this, or invite people to speak by turning on their microphones, as I'm sure is used today. And finally, we suggest that you have at least 2 people to run and manage an event like this, so that one person can speak and the other one can look after technical issues, as we've seen today. Just find the next slide. When you're actually in an online teaching session, there are also some good procedures that we've found ensure a kind of good experience for all parties. An initial welcome kind of holding slide is a good start. So the people log in, they can see when the session is about to start, so you can leave a few minutes for latecomers, for example. And throughout the session, it's really good to assume that nobody has used the platform that you're using before. Explain where the mute button is, where the chat function is, and as Ellie did earlier, explain that everyone should turn off their cameras and mute themselves. This, as she mentioned, won't just help your presentation be uninterrupted, but helps those with weaker internet signals so that they can maintain their connection. You can't have everyone talking in an online session, so working out an easy form of communication to check in with your audience, such as the raise hand function, is really useful for this, and you can use that in the chat. Finally, be aware of large data-hungry resources like sharing video and other things like that. We always provide a link to a video or audio that's off the platform that you're using, so that people can choose how they interact with it and to prevent crashing the platform that you're using.
We do most of our sessions on a platform called Blackboard Collaborate Ultra, just because that's one of the university's preferred platforms. It allows us to share live videos and presentations. It has a chat function and breakout rooms where students can meet for more intimate discussions. Sessions can be recorded and stored and accessed by students after the sessions have taken place. So we find that really useful, particularly for overseas students who might be in a different time zone and want to access the content after the class has taken place. We let students know we'll be recording the session before we begin. Pretty much everything that Blackboard Collaborate Ultra can do is achievable in more readily available platforms like Zoom or Microsoft Teams. So just because this is what we use, don't be put off. Don't think it's not something you can achieve yourselves with the platforms that you can download from the web. Since the first lockdown was announced in 2020, we haven't been able to offer object handling sessions for large groups of students, and object-based handling is absolutely the basis of our design teaching. So we've turned to making short films so that we can share our collections in the virtual classroom. And you can see one here, a still from a film that I made about an amazing paper jewelry piece. We've used tools like OpenShot Editor, which again are free to download and actually surprisingly easy to use. And we've stitched together footage, music, soundtracks. And so we've been recording the soundtracks under our duvets. That was a tip that Sarah got from Radio 4 and it works really well. We upload our films onto another platform called Panopto. Again, it's one of the university's preferred platforms, so we have to talk about the fact that we use it. But we do that because it offers a caption service, which is really helpful, not just for people who have disabilities, but for lots of our overseas students who don't have English as a first language. There is some free access to Panopto, although that is limited, but you can also get captions if you upload your films either to Vimeo or YouTube. And you can see here that what we do is we pop a link to Panopto, the film in Panopto in the chat. We do that because if you try and play the film live, it's very bandwidth hungry. People get into all sorts of problems. But here we just stick the link in the chat. We ask people to click on the link, watch the film, use the captions if they need them. And then when they come back into the classroom, we ask them to raise their hand to let us know that they've returned. So that, well, it gives us a sense, if nothing else, that there's somebody in the room, because it can feel pretty lonely when you're waiting. So here you can see a bunch of captions playing alongside the film. And here you can see the raise hand function. So again, this is the Blackboard Collaborate Ultra version, but I know there are similar functions in Teams and Zoom that you could use.
We try and ensure that all of our sessions are a mixture of some kind of presentation and some kind of activity. This often involves working in small breakout rooms, breakout sessions, as we mentioned earlier, and we do this on Blackboard Collaborate Ultra. But there are also breakout functions on Teams and Zoom, so you can do just the same thing for free. These are great ways of getting students involved and allowing discussion to take place in a more personal space. Once the class is in a virtual breakout room, moderators can drop in, so you as the presenter can drop into different groups and check everyone's okay and understands the task at hand. One really interesting thing that we've come across and use a lot of is a thing called Padlet, and some of you might have come across this in your teaching so far. These are ways of creating live worksheets that the students can add to in live time and see how everyone's doing things. We make one Padlet per breakout group, so each group gets their own Padlet page. And again, we drop the links for these into the chat so that people can access them away from the platform. Students can then fill up the Padlet worksheets. Again, they're all themed against a particular, against a particular thing that we're doing in that session. And we always give the students a 2-minute warning and ask that someone is prepared to speak about what they've been discussing in that session when we bring them back into the group, so everyone knows sort of what to expect. Padlets are something that we have kind of unlimited access to as being part of a university, but you can have up to 3 Padlets for free using the normal online service. You can also change these Padlets around, so those 3 that you use might be used in one teaching session for 3 groups, and then you can go in and edit them again, change images and content, and use your 3 Padlets for another version.
Thanks, Sarah. I absolutely love Padlets because art and design students are very visual people. So there's something about having something that's nicely designed and has images. And then whenever they're giving their feedback, we can pull up the Padlet and share it in a share screen. So it gives, I find people can be a bit nervous about feeding back, or because it's being recorded and it feels very public. So having the Padlet can act as a real prop for people when they're sharing their thoughts. So we're mindful that working online is exhausting for everybody, for staff and students. So we always set a timetable so our students know exactly what's expected from them in a session, how long it's going to take, and we always make sure that we program in regular comfort breaks throughout the session so people can stretch their legs and do whatever they need to do.
We're also increasingly mindful of the potential for our objects to be triggering. Here you can see an image from a late 18th century botanical book. The image is rather lovely and technically really interesting, but if you scratch the surface of any 18th or 19th century botanical drawing, you will find links to the colonial past. We've now taken to adding trigger warnings when the material that we're looking at has the potential to prompt discussions with painful implications to our community at UAL, that's our university. The trigger warnings are specific to the activity taking place and the content that's going to be discussed. And I think it's really important to point out that we've actually found trigger warnings a very useful tool as curators and people with a collection to help you feel more confident about presenting challenging material online. Acknowledging the ongoing impact of colonialism and racism to our audiences is hugely important. And trigger warning should also be extended to any material that raises issues around homophobia, transphobic attitudes, anti-Semitism, or anything that affects marginalised and minority communities.
In conclusion, all of our activities are focused on our objects and mirror our usual teaching practices. It's the objects that make the sessions, not the technology, although the technology is a great enabler and really helps. I want to finish by saying the same thing I started by. We don't set ourselves up as being the experts in this field. This is a work in progress. We're still learning what works and what doesn't work. And I feel like every session is another test bed where, we're constantly chipping away at what we do and responding to what the students are saying about what we do and trying to make changes for the better. So we've had help on the technological side. We are incredibly lucky in a university that the university gives us access to these platforms, but more importantly, that we had a tech team who we could go to and say, this is what we do in the classroom, how can we replicate it in the real world? And it may sound quite fancy pants when you look at some of the things that we've been describing, but absolutely everything we've talked about today is replicable using free or low cost platforms. And Sarah's done a fabulous little table that we're going to share with you as a PDF afterwards, which tells you the thing that you need to do, the resource that we use, and then the free source version that you can use yourself.
Yeah, so on here you can see things like the ability to provide captioning services, and also for alternative to Padlets, I'd also mention Google Forms. Google Documents and Google Forms are a great way of you being able to create content that other people can fill in, and it gives you the ability to kind of pool that information afterwards if you want to share that or use that for other sessions. So it is all possible, as Judy says, and it's been a real learning experience, but the key thing is it's always been based and focused on the object for us, which I think has led to us being quite confident in what we do. This table at the end here then are just some of the resources that Judy mentioned earlier. So the first one is the Shades of Noir kind of netiquette guide, their digital learning guide, which we found really useful in informing our practice. I've also, I think Ellie and Jenna have PDF copies of that resource table from the previous page, and I've also included some holding cards, trigger warning examples, things that we've put in to our PowerPoints that might be useful and adaptable for you. And if you have any questions, me and Judy are both very up for talking about this more and sharing more ideas, and our email addresses are at the end of this presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you both. As Judy and Sarah said, they've given us PDFs, so Jen is going to share those PDFs in the chat so you all have access to them. So our next speaker, Carlo Cassat, pronounce it for me, please, Carlo?
Corsato.
Carsato.
Yes.
Is an educator in the National Gallery, London. Energetic, dynamic, and dedicated. Carlo is a highly experienced teacher, and he's lectured for many institutions such as Morley College, London Art History Society, Art History Link Up, and the University of St Andrews and the Coulthard Institute. He is passionate about arts, history, digital technologies, and audience engagement. Carlo has published extensively in leading specialist journals and co-authored the article Digital Engagement, Diversity and Access in Museum Education, which is due to be published this summer.
Right.
So do you want to take it away, Carlo?
Sure, absolutely. I share my screen. Hopefully, I hope actually you can see it.
It's there.
I want to thank you. Thank you. I want to start actually immediately, with a big thank for having me tonight. It's a big pleasure. It's a big pleasure in particular to talk about this particular project I'm going to present briefly. It's very dear to me for many reasons. And actually the three main reasons are in the next slide. I'm going to show you immediately. Here we go. These three elements were pretty much the three guiding stars for this project that involve young adults, age, I will show you a bit later, but they're very, very young. They age between 16 and 20 years old. So very young. And we wanted to not only encourage access, because we all know that museums and galleries in UK, but not only UK, they'll be struggling to get this particular audience involved, and in particular with that direct agency, rather than just being, passive spectators. And for that reason, I will show you some of the things we've done to promote direct engagement of this particular audience. Before I start, I want to say that it was fascinating, the presentation we just heard, and I really lucky to be second, because in this way I don't need to repeat most of the things being already said, because what they've done with their university project is pretty much exactly the same kind of journey we went through at the National Gallery. And I also need to say that this is not just a one-man band show. It's been a team effort. The entire department. I'm very lucky. I work with wonderful people, very creative, with a super varied expertise. And without them, we couldn't absolutely even think of doing the workshop I'm presenting now. The other thing I want to say before I dive into more details is the learning team really was keen to transform most, and in the end, actually, we eventually managed to do all our programs available online. That took as you probably know, a little while. So we need actually a few months when the first lockdown started to really adapt and reconsider. And again, here I want to emphasize that the team effort was crucial to really reconsider all the practices we're doing and to do it online. And the biggest challenge was how you can interact with an audience that, for safeguarding reasons, needs to be in a way invisible, right? They can't really be visible on camera. They can, but with some, with some limitation, get the mic on, so they can use all of the strategies that they've been already presented. So we use extensively live polling, chat boxes, Q&A, and all the other wonderful resources that have been already presented. So I won't repeat that. But before I show you exactly what we did, I want to show you what was the background, right? So we wanted to try to involve an audience that is not really engaging not only with museums and galleries, but also with the subject in general, right? This is all probably data that you know very well. Art and design are not the most popular subjects for A levels, that you can see here the numbers. And actually, in the last 3 years, we sort of observed a drop. It's not super significant because it's around 2-3%, but every year it's a bit dropping for many reasons. I don't have here the time to discuss it. Probably this for a Q&A opportunity later. And also in terms of demographic, in terms of gender, we have a large female audience over a male audience. Also for this reason, that there are many reasons that we can probably discuss a bit later. So this was pretty much the aspiration, try to get people involved regarding what kind of subject they are studying. And if they're obviously interested in art design and history of art, that was better, but it's not that the particular object. And indeed, for that reason, we decided to work with a charity that probably you know. Let's see if I can manage to move on to the next slide. Here we go. This is the Art History Link Up. That's the charity I decided to involve immediately. I worked with them in the past. I know exactly the way they operated, and I know already, and this is not a small detail, they were already familiar with some of the practices for digital involvement being described earlier on. So that was actually quite important because for many reasons we didn't have the time during the session to provide a full training. As has been said in the previous presentation, obviously at the very beginning, we offer a very clear list of actions we expected, how to do it, how to use the platform. But I'm not going to lie, it was a very good point that pretty much all the students involved were very familiar with the platform. The platform in particular we used was Zoom. But as been said, it's not the only one. It's just that the one was available to the gallery already set up. In terms of technical aspects, I will tell you a bit later. So if you're not familiar with Art History Link Up, they have a very important and only apparently simple mission: make art history available to everyone. So what they do, they offer free art history A levels and extended project qualification courses. They do this on during term time on Saturdays. And they offer, before the pandemic and even after the pandemic, in collaboration, these courses are offering collaboration with the National Galleries and the Wallace Collection. What really changed was a quite dramatic change, obviously, for them. So before, they were used to come on site and study in the flesh, with the real paintings, which, at the National Gallery and the Wallace Collections. Obviously, the pandemic made this impossible, so they had to recreate their sort of on-site experience online, and that was pretty much the same kind of challenge we had with this workshop. What is fascinating in terms of access and demographic, they already engaging with the kind of audience I was very keen to work with. Said over 40% of their students are from underrepresented backgrounds, and over 60% of the same students may have disabilities or they may be from lower income families. So this aspiration make it really, really accessible. This is part of the aspiration of the National Gallery being a national museum was particularly important. And all the elements that are part of all the activities they've done, and they also informed and inspired the program we've done with them, is a formal education. So it's real training. So they learn real things they can reuse and part of the curriculum they're studying. Regarding, again, I want to just to emphasize this, regarding they are studying necessarily art history or design as main subjects, I mean. Immersive learning before was on site with real objects, and we recreated this idea of immersive learning in the workshop. Inclusion, I already mentioned this. Diversity, cooperation, and the cooperation was the key element for the preparation of this particular workshop. So the workshop was a night event. Originally, we planned to have it as a streamed online and live streaming online from the gallery. So I perfectly remember when with our AV and digital teams, we organized all this this filming, and then unfortunately the final and very successful, I must say, rehearsal happened exactly 2 days before the second lockdown was enforced. So that was completely cancelled, and so we recreated the experience online. I remember in one day I've taken more than 300 photographs to recreate the sense of the space, the scale, and the kind of interaction you have with the objects, because as been said before, absolutely objects and people are at the center of what we do. This is what makes an experience a learning experience and not just entertainment. It was a big effort. I mentioned already my lovely colleagues, and I will tell you those involved. So in terms of audience, we had on the call that night 40 students, sixth form stage support students, 2 young producers, because when I started developing this workshop, I thought that I wanted peer learning being at the center of this experience. So I wanted the main speakers to be young people. Juraya and Olivia at that moment were respectively 20 and 19, and they were part of a program we have at the gallery, the Young Producers. So they've been trained by 3 educators, myself, my colleague Kate and Jenny. And I organized coaching sessions to explain them how to operate with this particular platform, Zoom, how we're going to structure. We work together against the structure, obviously, and content. I will say something about content in a moment. And also, particularly, we train them in managing an invisible audience, which is very, very hard. If you ever tried to deliver, and I'm sure you did in the last years, something online, it's really hard to talk to someone you're not there. It's like the experience I'm living now. So I'm assuming you are with me, you're engaging with me, but it's a lot of assumption, right? And you need to sort of create that expectation assumption in your head to carry on and be still, energetic and snappy. So we organized that. And to organize this 1 hour event, we involve 3 managers, our programmer, Margot Potron, myself, and Rose Aiden. She's the founder and CEO of Artistry Link Up. And as you can see, I just added that little icon just to say this is a virtual cycle where all the people need to work together. In terms of content, we produced a menu that I designed, but all the content was developed in collaboration with the 2 young producers, Olivia and Juraya. They actually came up with all the themes. And as you can see, just reading on the screen, they're all very big themes and big ideas. And we found that there was particularly empowering for the young audience to have the opportunity to discuss exactly these themes and see these themes reflected in paintings. So they were reading paintings and discussing ideas that were dear to them. They're really meaningful for their lives. There is a tiny description. Unfortunately, you can't read it here, but if you're interested to see how we designed this menu, I'm happy to share it with you. There were links. So this menu was sent before the session to the audience. They could study the painting, they could read the description. And at the very beginning, after obviously the brief, we asked them to vote. So they could choose live on spot the content they want to explore on the night. And that was an element I was particularly keen to include. But as you can imagine, that was particularly difficult for the 2 presenters to be, knowledgeable and expert about all the paintings, because they had no idea which painting is going to be chosen during the session. So that was particularly, I would say, challenging, but also thrilling, if you like, because it was really live, and we are shaping together with our audience the content. We split the session in 3 different parts. Every part had a leading speaker, the first 2 in conversation with the educator, and the role of the educator on the call, you can see Kate here with Olivia, was the one to model the kind of questions and feedback we are expecting from the audience, not feeding the responses, but explain the kind of language, inform jargon, explain, so they very often, this is the way I describe it. So educators, when our facilitators are playing the role of the fools, so they pretend don't know anything, right? And they ask, oh, can you explain this? Can you clarify this? Oh, what do you mean with this? So they are doing the audience and they give a voice to the audience, and they are also taking ideas from the chat and the polling, and they are sort of feedback this to the speakers. And we use, as I said already, live polling and Q&A all the time across the entire session. And then we use close-up, and as been said already, is good to have at least 2 people managing, behind the scenes the session. So I was in charge not only of linking the different sessions, but also all the technical bits. So I was zooming and following the speakers in the different sections they wanted to see better, and that helps, to direct the critical thinking and decide at the moment on spot, reacting to the questions, what kind of facts they wanted to be explored more. And here you can see Juraya in conversation with my lovely colleague Jenny. I thought, since I had pretty much a minute, that's probably is good for you to see these 2 lovely girls in action. And pretty much, this 1-minute clip will sum up all the things I pretty much said already. Oh, I probably need to re-share it for a second. Give me a second for this with the sound, because otherwise you won't be able to see it. I just play it. Let's see if you can hear it.
I actually love this painting.
Can you hear it?
Yes, we can.
Wonderful.
The colors are particularly what attracted me to it. I love the color blue, and I love the types of blues Van Gogh uses in his portraits and paintings. And many people actually view this painting as unsettling because of the way it contrasts with the colors present, the yellow, the blue, the red. However, I love the warmth of the terracotta tiles and juxtaposing the coolness of the blue. What's your opinion, Livy?
Yeah, well, I do sometimes see this painting as quite lonely. I think blue is quite a cold colour, as you said, and that kind of absence of human life, and there's no sitter. Whilst it invites us into the painting, it also reminds us that no one's there. And I think that's particularly kind of poignant when knowing about the argument Van Gogh had with Gauguin, his friend, and this was painted pretty soon after. And Van Gogh, their argument was so bad that Van Gogh actually threatened Gauguin with a razor, and you may know that he then chopped off his ear.
Right, you probably noticed, they create a conversation between them, and when the other was not speaking, where the other was checking the chat box, taking ideas, and sometimes, since I know pretty much, the rough structure of what they are about to say, I was sort of zooming, giving the prompt to move on to the next ideas or point I wanted to touch. So there's a lot going on behind the scenes. It's not really visible. It looks, to me at least, quite sleek and natural, but there's a lot going on. They're constantly thinking not only about what they're saying, but also controlling the entire event. So just let me conclude saying that, so the 3 elements, the 3 key elements are planning. You need to plan very well this, training yourself and the people involved with you in the event, and rehearsing. It sounds probably stupid, but we rehearse this millions of times. It's important to get confidence and to make it very natural. And in terms of delivery, show your passion, speak the truth. When they've been asked a question, they didn't know the answer, they didn't try to make up an answer. They say, oh, I don't know, what do you think? And they created the answer with the audience. Know your stuff, listen to others, and you see, they asking, what do you think about this? All the times, and check the chat box, as Juraya was doing when Olivia was speaking, and be mindful of time. Hope I've been that mindful of time. Thank you so much. If you want to get in contact with myself or the learning team, you have my details over here.
Thank you very much, Carlo. That was really interesting. So before we move on to our final speakers at the Mariners Museum, I have to actually start by apologizing to them first, because they were in the waiting room on the Zoom thing for ages, and we were looking for their names and not the museum's name. So hopefully their tech is all going to work. So the next speakers are Jennifer Hackney and Harriet Smith. Jennifer is a senior educator in material culture at the Mariners Museum and Park, where she has worked for the last 2 years. There she focuses on integrating the museum's collection into educational programming and expanding the docent training program to better serve the students of Eastern Virginia. Jennifer's love of objects, especially chairs, stems from her nearly 10 years working in the film industry as a set decorator buyer on period-specific shows. Prior to coming to the Mariners Museum, Jennifer worked at the Children's Museum of Virginia and the Governor's School for the Arts in Norfolk, VA. She held internships at the Morse Museum and of American Art, the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum, and the Smithsonian American Art Library. Jennifer holds a Bachelor's of Fine Art in theatre set design from Virginia Commonwealth University, a master's degree from G.W. Cochrane's Smithsonian Program in decorative arts and design history, and will be starting her PhD in American Studies in the fall at the College of William and Mary. Harriet has worked for the Mariners Museum and Park for the past 6 years as Director of Education. Harriet and her team work to provide students across the region with an engaging museum experience that enriches their education and helps them to find a sense of ownership and belonging within the museum community. Harriet has over 11 years of experience in the field of informal education, and before joining the Mariners Museum team, worked as an education and volunteer specialist at Thunder Bay National Maritime Sanctuary in Alpena, Michigan. Harriet has a bachelor's and master's degree in history from Clark University. So you're ready to take it away, ladies? You're muted, by the way.
Hello. Thank you so much for having us. So we are not going to share our screen. We are actually coming to you from inside of our studios. So what I'm going to ask that everyone do is just hover over our image where you see those 3 dots, click those 3 dots, and then you can pin our video to your screen, which would make us full screen. So today, my colleague Harriet Smith and I are going to share with you how the Education Department at the Mariners Museum and Park developed a robust series of programs and virtual field trips that brought the museum experience into all students' homes, especially as our museum doors remained closed. We maintain the spirit of our department's goals of providing an equitable experience for any and all students, no matter their background, as a way to break down barriers to entry so any member of our immediate community feels welcome in our institution. So with that, I want to introduce Harriet Smith, the Director of Education, who is going to discuss our museum and the Education Department.
All right, thanks, Jennifer. So hi, everybody. As Jennifer said, I'm going to talk a bit about our museum and what our specific department does here. And so our museum was founded in 1930, and we have a pretty big collection of 32,000 objects that all are maritime related. We also have over 110,000 books, 800,000 photographs, films, and negatives, and over 1 million pieces of archival material, making it the largest maritime museum, or sorry, largest maritime library in the Western Hemisphere. The museum itself has 90,000 square feet of exhibition galleries, and I'm going to just move out of the way so you can take a look at the pictures. These are images from some of our galleries. We're very lucky to have this wonderful space. We're also the repository for artifacts from the Civil War ironclad USS Monitor. And on top of that, our museum sits in the middle of an urban park. So the park is owned and operated by the museum. It's 550 acres. And we also have a 167-acre lake in the middle too, along with a 5-mile shoreline and trail. And so this museum, as I said, it's been in the community of southeastern Virginia, which is on the eastern coast of the United States since 1930, but it's traditionally had a reputation of not being very accessible or inclusive or really welcoming to the community in the immediate area. And so 5 years ago, we got a new CEO. His name is Howard Hagee, and he started repositioning the museum in the community to be more of a resource instead of an attraction. And so we realized that one of the big things that we had to do was really figure out what our mission was going to be. And so this mission statement that was developed guides everything we do at the museum. So we work to connect people to the world's waters, because through the water and our shared maritime heritage, we're all connected to one another. And so we started focusing on being storytellers and making sure that people felt like this museum and collection, that they felt a sense of ownership and belonging here. And one of the things we had to do was lower as many barriers to access as we could. So we adopted a new admission price of $1 per person. Before this, it was $14 per person, which for a lot of members of our community is prohibitively expensive. So lowering this admission fee really kind of transformed our position in the community. We welcomed in more and more families and started to really help people feel, again, that sense of ownership and belonging, and like this was their museum. And so as the entire museum was taking on this new position as a resource, the education department was following suit in making sure that we were providing a service to the students in and around our community. And so our department is guided by 4 central goals. The first is access, engage, and evaluate. And so these 3 things, when they kind of come together, so we're providing free programs and transportation to the museum, we're engaging them with these wonderful experiences, and then we're evaluating that entire process to help improve it for the future. When those 3 things overlap, we have our 4th goal, which is our kind of our ultimate value proposition, which is enrichment. And so our programs are designed to enhance the standard curriculum that teachers in the area have to follow, while also providing kids this experience that's going to help them develop the skills to become successful adults, and help them form connections to the content, to their classmates, and to their community. And so these are some pictures of our enrichment programs. We do things like bring out artifacts from our collection. These are students looking at a barometer. We welcome kids into the galleries and really make them feel like this is their space. We have a whole range of hands-on activities. We also try to inject a little bit of silliness and playfulness into the experience, because so many kids are used to that, you know, coming into a museum and being told to be quiet, basically. And so we want kids to feel valued and that sense of ownership and belonging. And so before the pandemic, our focus had been on getting kids into the museum for in-person programming. We did offer virtual programs, but it wasn't a focus. So in the 2018-19 school year, we saw 13,000 students, and only 3,000 of those were virtual. The vast majority were in person. And then the following school year, in March of 2020, we were on track to serve 15,000 kids, which for us would have been one of our highest years in recent history. And then the pandemic hit. And so I'm going to let Jennifer take it away and talk about how we responded.
Thank you, Harriet. So when on March 13th, we received an email from our president and CEO that we were not to come into the museum the next day, and that for the time being, it would be temporary. Like most, we thought that this would be for a couple of weeks, but we all know that was not the reality. And we really needed to have this sense of not having panic in dealing with the fact that prior to being sent home, we had a handful of field trips and school outreaches that were going to happen in March, April, and May that were all canceled. And we recognized the need to help out our community's students as well as their families. As an institution, we were also not really embracing the validity of online content, whether through digital programming or social content, and we had to make a major shift when the pandemic hit. In the education department, we, along with all cultural institutions, wanted to provide value to our community. What can we do for our students who lost field trips and were now stuck at home with their parents trying to navigate this new normal? We didn't want to rush to push content online or create videos for students to passively watch. This really isn't fun, especially for a history museum and for the age group that we're typically dealing with, which for us is mostly 3rd through 5th graders, which are roughly in the States, that's 8-year-olds to about 12-year-olds. Passive videos, it's not fun, and it doesn't provide the value that we pride ourselves on. And unfortunately, unlike other institutions, we don't have cute animals here where we can have great videos of them being fed, which would absolutely be entertaining. So ultimately, the education team decided the best plan of action was to find a way for students to interact with an educator in real time. We developed a series called What's the Story If Artifacts Could Talk? And this is the flyer from that, which I will explain. we decided to leave behind the Virginia SOLs. These are the educational points called the standards of learning. And typically teachers are looking for these when they're booking a field trip as a way to augment their classroom learning. Rather, we decided to embrace providing value. What did parents need? They needed a short break. And what did students need? They also needed a short break, but one that was interactive and personal. So we created these as a way to look specifically at objects from our collection in tangible ways for these younger students. Each program was roughly 30 minutes long and was done on Google Hangouts. And since this was the beginning of the pandemic, we wanted something that didn't need to be downloaded, could be accessed from anywhere, and all it really needed was an email address and would be easy for both students and their parents or guardians. We decided to book a maximum of 3 families at a time. This was the maximum number of screens that could be visible while sharing our screen. It made it easier to see the students, their faces, their interest level, and made it so we could call on individuals while doing the program. And the advantage of this webinar series was the fact that it was intimate and individualized. We had 4 programs in total. We had the Tsunami and the Sword, which is a tale of a sword that survived a tsunami while on board the USS Monongahela. And at the end, students create a short story, poem, or song. We had Pyramids, Boats, and Emojis, which is a look at ancient Egypt that includes students building a pyramid out of a dollar bill, making their own boat out of found materials in and around their home, and creating a short sentence or story with emojis as a way to understand hieroglyphics. We also had the Mariners of Moana, which is where students look at South Pacific artifacts that relate to the movie Moana, and at the end, they create a mental map. And finally, we had technology and a painting, where participants become artwork detectives in order to examine a painting through the lens of technology, and they create a visual timeline. And this is what we did in the spring leading into the summer. However, and these are some of the creations that we received photos of from students. So kind of moving around, we've got a dollar bill pyramid, and then we have 2 boats made from found materials. And the 2 images on the bottom are those visual timelines that would have been created in technology and a painting, one of the history of a lawnmower and another of the history of a Nintendo Switch. Over the summer, it was decided that the museum would not open until 2021. So the education team pivoted again and adjusted, since we would not see any students in the gallery for at minimum the fall semester, and it ultimately became the entire school year. And we fully leaned into virtual learning. The department as a whole already had some infrastructure in place, but the studios that we had, which we are calling you from now, really had outdated equipment that would not suffice for the 2021 school year. So donor funding allowed us to completely overhaul our studios to get all new equipment. Additionally, all of our educators who developed programs had to shift all of our programming from an in-person learning style to virtual learning. And while most of our programs can be adjusted for any age group, the bulk of our students that we see, like I said before, are 3rd through 5th graders. So here are the programs that we either developed or adjusted. Now, these ones in red are full programs that were actually developed out of those webinar series. The green arrows are 4 separate programs that were created out of the 3rd grade Exploration in the Ancient World program. So these are each about 30 minutes long, which we found is the best amount of time for 3rd graders, so 8 or 9-year-olds. And then finally, these yellow arrows, these are science and history programs that we had existing that in person are about 1 hour and 15 minutes. And these were truncated down to 45-minute programs, which is about the best timeline for 5th graders, so those 11 to 12-year-olds. So here are some things that we understood specifically for our students that we deal with. Most students that we see are in elementary school, and we have to approach virtual learning understanding that mindset. Attention spans are much shorter virtually than they are in person, and we needed our programs to be exciting, entertaining, educational, and ones that didn't result in screen fatigue. And I just realized I hadn't shared my sound. Just wanted to make sure that we had that. So one thing that we do is incorporate game-based play. This is interactive between student and educator as well as between classmates, which is really important with these younger minds. We structure everything in Zoom as meetings, much like we are today, so that we can see everyone's faces and students can see their classmates, which is really important for that team building. And this gameplay also incorporates abstract thinking from home. This is a guess the noise game from our program called Extreme Deep, and I'm going to play a noise from that program if it wants to play. Apparently it doesn't want to play.
We can hear a noise.
Oh, you did hear a noise. Great. I didn't hear it on my end. So that noise that you hear, students would then have to guess which one it is. They could type the answer into the chat. And in this case, that noise is a Weddell seal. Another thing that we do is incorporating movement and dance. These are quick ways to break up the programs that allow students to get out of their seats. This includes a game in finding tech in the technology and painting program where they have to get up out of their seats and look for examples of technology around them. We also have a tsunami dance in our Ring of Fire program, a hurricane dance in our Hurricanes Predicting Disaster program, and a make your own haka from the Mariners of Moana. We also incorporate Zoom polls. Specifically, this is used as a primary source analysis game where students have to choose the best possible answer based on a set of clues that they're given. And understanding Zoom allows us to know that sometimes Zoom malfunctions, and so that poll may not show up. And so we always want to have that set of questions on screen as well. We also have Miles. So this is, where's Miles? Miles is a cartoon character that was created for our museum a few years ago. He's a curator at the museum, and we decided to incorporate him into the programs. He's generally hidden among the slides, and students have to find him, much like Where's Waldo. When he is found, he then reveals a program-specific fact. He may ask students to do an activity, and in a couple of programs, those facts that he reveals actually lead to a puzzle that needs to be solved in order to reveal something really cool. And then finally, we also include collections analysis from objects that we have. This is getting students to look critically at objects in the collection. It teaches artwork and object analysis, becoming those artwork detectives, or learning how to compare and contrast two images. And this specifically is from our Chinese junk and other vessels for third graders. But we also have to understand our community's needs. Equitability is key for our larger student body. Students call in from all over Hampton Roads, locally as well as out of state. Hampton Roads is made up of 7 cities, and most of those students are coming from Title I or lower income areas. We wanted to ensure that any student, regardless of circumstance, could engage fully in every program and not be left out of any part. So this really went into every part of planning these programs. So for one, any in-program activity is only going to involve a sheet of paper and a writing utensil, or just their own bodies and minds. We have post-program activities, and we really thought hard about readily available supplies and easy substitutions as well. So if we might ask for craft sticks, then we have substitutions of sticks found around the house or rolled up pieces of paper. It could also be that a program calls for paper cups, but if you may not have paper cups, you might have bits of cardboard around. Each of our programs, if you are calling in from Virginia, you are actually given the ability to have a free family membership. And so this is a year-long membership where the student and all their family members can come here for free for an entire year. And finally, all of our programs are pre-recorded. So in the fall, we spent a lot of time recording these programs, understanding that a child might be ill on the day of their virtual field trip, or their internet might cut out. And so this gives all students the option of being able to participate. Programs were actually truncated down into small, tangible bits that could be taken in easily, so that the most important information was relayed, and it was divided into chapters. So these were mostly 4 to 8 minutes long, and any post activity that had a lot of instructions was also recorded as well. And with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Harriet.
So as Jennifer described, we learned a lot over this last year. It was challenging, just like it was for all of the other institutions out there, but we came out stronger on the other side. And we're going to continue to offer this really robust catalog of online programs and keep engaging kids virtually as best we can. And we're also going to apply some of these lessons to our in-classroom or our in-person experiences. All the things that Jennifer described with, getting kids up out of their seats, doing something physical, these really quick, fun, hands-on activities that involve basic supplies. These are all things that we're going to adapt into our existing in-person programs when we welcome students back into our museum in the fall. And so we'll just end by saying thank you very much for this opportunity, and we hope you guys enjoyed our presentation.